Welcome to Center for East Turkestan National Interest podcast program. In today's episode, we will delve into quotes from Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent speech and critically examine the silence of foreign journalists who have visited East Turkestan. Joining us is Mrs. Roqeya Turdush, a researcher at the Center for East Turkestan National Interest and the author of East Turkestan's Right to Sovereignty, Decolonization, and Beyond. Okay, so Mrs. Roqeya Turdush, why did the Chinese state website recently publish specific quotes from Chinese President Xi Jinping's speeches from several years?
Because Xi Jinping and other high-level, low-level Chinese officials are the mastermind behind the Uyghur genocide. Genocide policies such as detaining Uyghurs and other Turkic people for re-education camps, forced labor camps, and removing children, Uyghur children specifically, from their homes was implemented in large scale since 2017, following the Xi Jinping's words, absolute no mercy. As a consequence, 1 to 3 million people were detained and around 900,000 kids were removed from their home just because of their ethnicity and religion. These people inside the camps tortured, executed, sentenced to long-term imprisonment, and sent for slave labor. These genocidal acts were planned as a state policy and repeatedly implemented despite their fatal consequences and the fatal impact on Uyghurs and other Turkic people. Xi Jinping himself proudly confirmed that those policies are succeeded and totally correct. And he said this in his many speeches. That means he's willing to implement this policy by knowing deadly or genocide consequences. And he wants that consequences. So obviously, he has general intent of genocide. Since Xi Jinping is head of the Chinese state, his confirmation reveals China's general intent of genocide. But that does not mean China has no special intent of genocide. China has also special intent to destroy Uyghur and other Turkic people because of all their policies closely linked to Chinese characteristics, settler colonialism, which is eliminating these population and create space for Chinese settlers. So the speech of Xi Jinping is like a constitution of China right now, and the quotes from his speech published and propagated by the Chinese state media is guiding policy for Chinese officials to govern the region.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Roqeya Turdush. Then could you explain the means of those quotes? For example, main quote from his speech in 2024 propagated by the Chinese state media is imperative fully and faithfully implement the party's policy for the governance of Xinjiang and adhere to party's goals, original aspiration of cultivating talent for the party and providing policy advice for the party. What does that mean?
I think means of these quotes from the Xi Jinping speech that propagated in Chinese websites emphasize total party control of the region in East Turkestan. As far as I understood, this quote that you mentioned has two parts. First part is quote, fully and faithfully implement the party's policy for the governance of Xinjiang. That is mean they will not change or stop genocidal policy that they are implementing right now. It also reveals that there is no Xinjiang Uyghur autonomy and everything is controlled by Chinese State Communist Party. Second part of the quote said, adhere to party school's original aspiration of cultivating talent for the party and providing policy advice for the party. Question is, who are these talents that he mentioned and what kind of policy advice they may provide to the Chinese Communist Party to control the region? So first of all, so-called these talents are the loyal party members strictly trained and cultivated by the Communist Party. Second, they will not dare to provide fair policy advice based on reality in the region. They can only provide that something make the party happy, the Communist Party happy, and intensify Communist Party's existing policies in the region, in East Turkestan, even in the situation that their advice could be wrong and suicidal for the China's reputation. They don't care. They can't dare to give fair and good advice. Let me give you one example about that. In 1980, the CCP Secretary General Hu Yaobang visited East Turkestan and suggested genuine autonomy and a more relaxed policy approach to East Turkestan. And other Chinese government officials harshly criticized him and removed him from his position. So I don't think any of the Chinese officials will dare to provide any fair policy advice to the Chinese state about East Turkestan. They will ask more harsh oppression and meanwhile provide bunch of lies that praise China's existing genocidal policy in East Turkestan. So whatever Xi Jinping said in his speech and this code is useless, doesn't work.
Yeah, and I don't think Xi Jinping he can create happiness, as he mentioned in his speech, while there are no any plans to change the current policies, right?
Yeah, exactly. How could they create happiness while implementing genocide? That's total lie. It's very obvious because it's impossible to create happiness in East Turkestan while implementing non-stop genocide, right?
Yeah, so how will they hide this lie then?
Oh, Chinese government is very good at it. They're very good at how to hide their lies. The Chinese government has been creating a false image of happiness among Uyghurs since a long history, so they have experienced it. The few weeks ago, we learned that Chinese officials are forcing Uyghur families to sign documents that show fake income levels. One Uyghur man said he had no income or any assets, but so many debt. But he was made to sign a paper stating that he earned 100,000 yuan annually. It's about 14 to 15,000 US dollars. This kind of thing is not unusual. It happened all the time. I remember one time back when I was in middle school in Gulja in East Turkestan, the Chinese officials showed up at my grandmother's house. They brought all sorts of things, new clothes, nice furniture, and even a few ships. They did the same for a few other houses in that village at that time. Then they told us to wait because some visitors were coming. I was very young at that time. I didn't know what happens, but I was excited. Who's going to come? Soon after, a group of people from Turkey arrived, but they were only shown what the Chinese officials invited them to see with everything carefully staged. The visitors walked around, talked to some of the people, and then left, probably thinking we were well off. But as soon as they were gone, the truth came up. The officials took everything back. The furniture, the ship, even the clothes they had dressed my uncle in just for the show. So it was very ridiculous. Right now in East Turkestan, in many towns, Uyghurs in outside the detention camps are required to gather daily to dance and sing to display supposed happiness. Even overseas, the Chinese government hires Uyghurs who are working for Chinese propaganda, dresses them in traditional Uyghur clothing, and pays them to walk the streets of major cities, smiling to showcase the Uyghur smile, Uyghur happiness, or Uyghur culture. So in last month, a young Uyghur couple in France has staged such displays and multiple times in Paris, which caused anger among Uyghurs on social media because there were videos widely spread in social media, and Uyghurs are very upset about that. And additionally, also, I can say that Chinese embassies in various countries dress Chinese citizens in Uyghur traditional ethnic clothes and have them dance as Uyghurs during Chinese festivals and Chinese national celebrations in various countries, in almost every country around the world. And the people in these countries doesn't know who are the Uyghurs. So those Chinese are dressed up as an Uyghur and dancing, and they were thinking Uyghur people are happily living in China. This is done to make up people believe the propaganda that Uyghurs are happily living and that there is no repression and no genocide. Such fake displays have become a common tactic in China, much like the country's fake products.
Thank you. And I think China is trying very hard to hide its genocide by spreading fake information, as you mentioned in this podcast before. And recently, they invited foreign journalists to visit East Turkestan, and some of these journalists have believed China's propaganda and telling the world how China has modernized the region and claiming that there is no any genocide. So, what is your opinion about that?
Journalists are not allowed to freely visit East Turkestan. Who they can or allowed to visit East Turkestan by the Chinese government are closely monitored. For example, this month in October 13, more than 200 media outlets, government agencies, and international organizations from various countries participated 6th World Media Summit in Urumqi. But these journalists who participated this summit and those government agencies and organizations were typically shown only pre-arranged, staged sites by the Chinese government. And they could face pressure from their own governments too if they reported anything critical about China, because their government has close economic and the political relationship with China. For example, in 2020, the Chinese government invited Albanian Canadian journalist Olsi Yazıcı to visit East Turkestan, likely because he wasn't aligned with the U.S. interests. So China think he's a pro-China, and China think he will help them to hide the truth. However, the Olsi was disturbed, very disturbed by what he saw there when he visited the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims who could not openly practice Islam, and the young Uyghur woman performing dance for Chinese officials. And during his interview, he noticed that the fear among Uyghurs are extreme and intense. They were so scared to speak openly. So Olsi later shared his findings, exposing the reality of China's treatment against the Uyghurs. As a result, he lost his teaching position in Albania due to the Chinese pressure on the university that he's working in Albania. So not all journalists have been as courageous as Olsi. Many remain silent, disregarding journalistic ethics. The Chinese government uses these journals as a tool to counter US-led criticism, claiming that the allegation of Uyghur genocide are fabrication meant to damage China's reputation.
Thank you again, Mrs. Ruqya Turdush. And as we wrap up today's episode, it's very clear that the narrative surrounding East Turkestan is complex and often manipulated by powerful forces. The voices of those who understand the true situation, like you, Mrs. Ruqya Turdush, are very essential in shedding light on the realities faced by the Uyghur people. And we also encourage our listeners to stay informed and continue questioning the information presented by those with vested interests. Until next time, this is the Center for East Turkestan National Interest, signing off.